Well, that was a dramatic Tony season, wasn't it? It's giving Carol versus Barbara. I really don't remember the last time I've been so on edge about who would win Best Actress in a Musical. This is probably, looking back, going to end up being the biggest Tony's race of the decade. But hi, my name is Ben Daniels, and I love talking theater, movies, especially of the camp variety, music, and all things queer media. And last night, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but there is a small little award show called the Tonys. It was a really strong Broadway season this past year, and it was great seeing so many wonderful shows being represented at the awards this year. And today I will be giving my thoughts on the Tony Awards ceremony that took place this past weekend. Not too long ago, I filmed a video giving my predictions on who I think would win the Tonys this year. I covered most of the categories, all the musical categories, not all of the play categories, but some of them. And I thought rather than posting just a basic predictions video, I thought I will react after having seen the Tony Awards show to the video that I filmed last week and see how many I got right and how many I got wrong. So yeah, I think this will be a cool way of doing a video like this. Of course, I'm going to give my thoughts on the ceremony itself, but as I talk about the awards that won, I will be flashing back, if you will, to what I had filmed, and then discussing my opinions on who won versus who lost, and we will keep building off of that. So with all that out of the way, let's get started, and I'll start by saying I loved Cynthia Erivo as host. I thought she was surprisingly very funny. Even funnier was probably the fact that she had like constant outfit changes throughout the evening. Very, very beautiful outfits, some better than others, but mostly the dresses were a lot of reds and whites and a little bit of blacks until the end of the show, where she gave us a beautiful splash of purple, which was probably my favorite dress of the evening. I love the opening number she sang. I thought that was really well done. Even better, though, I thought was the final number she sang, which was a rendition of And I'm Telling You I'm Not Going from Dreamgirls. I thought that was a lovely surprise. The In Memoriam was very nice. It was Cynthia Erivo and Sara Bareilles singing Tomorrow from Annie, which was a very weird song choice if you ask me. I didn't really care for that, but of course we lost a lot of great people in the theater this past year, and I think this was a beautiful tribute to them. They did a 10-year anniversary medley of Hamilton as well. I don't really care for Hamilton, so honestly that's where I tuned out, but good for them, good for the fans, good for whoever actually likes that musical. For me, it's just whatever. But certainly for most people, I would say a highlight of the night. But I myself, speaking purely as a critic, not just someone who has a preconceived bias against Hamilton, I was still disappointed by the medley. Not because I don't like the musical, but because I thought it was a huge letdown from a set standpoint, from a costuming standpoint, and from a choreography standpoint. I thought it lacked in all of those areas. They were all kind of dressed in black, which was weird. There was not really much of a set for them to work with. They could have at least brought something. And the choreo, I thought, was a letdown. But still, oh my god, where did 10 years go? I remember first hearing about Hamilton. I remember first cringing at Hamilton. I remember listening to the score and I'm like, no thank you, not for me. So yeah, those 10 years really flew by. I was surprised that nothing Wicked related happened. There was a new TV spot for Wicked for Good at the Tonys, but it was really just footage we've already seen from the trailer. But yeah, no sign of Ariana Grande at the Tonys. That was surprising. I really thought that they would do like a duet of sorts. But either way, Cynthia was a great host. I thought she did a fantastic job. Most of the other performances were fantastic. Of course, Audra got up there and sang Rose's Turn, which was actually a surprising choice because I would have assumed it would have been Everything's Coming Up Roses, or if they wanted to do a song featuring all three nominees, they could have done Together Wherever We Go, which features Audra McDonald, Joy Woods, and Danny Burstein together singing, which I think would have been a good highlight of the talent of all three of them. So it is a little interesting that they went with Rose's Turn, and I don't quite know how I feel about that. On the one hand, I get it, because they want to be pushing Audra as like the main draw for this production, and they want to get butts in seats, so they took the best number of the show, and got Audra to perform that. But honestly, I feel kind of bad for people who haven't seen Gypsy starring Audra yet, because now the whole thing was practically spoiled for them. The whole Rose's Turn. They sang almost the whole song. They didn't really cut much of it. They cut a little bit, but not a whole lot. So it was a fantastic performance, just a surprising choice, I guess I would say. Surprising and not surprising at the same time. It's both surprising and completely predictable. It also kind of sort of makes sense. From a business perspective, from a we need to keep getting butts in seats perspective. Nicole Scherzinger did not sing with one look, interestingly enough. She actually sang As If We Never Said Goodbye. And of course, she did a beautiful job, as she always does. They cut down that song a lot, which I guess makes sense. That song in the show itself is running like 6.5 minutes. But I thought she was, of course, brilliant as usual. The performance for Maybe Happy Ending gave me goosebumps and moved me to tears. I have not seen Maybe Happy Ending yet, but after seeing this, it makes me really want to go back to New York and watch this show. I was trying to squeeze time in and watch it on my last trip to New York, but unfortunately I just couldn't. So I think on my next New York trip, that'll 100% be the first show that I watch, because it looks absolutely beautiful. I think the concept is clever. It looks very moving, very heartwarming. It looks like, and I've heard this analogy get thrown around a lot, it looks like if a Pixar film were a musical, like a heyday Pixar film, not like a 2020s Pixar film, like back when they had unique ideas and inventive concepts. So that was a fantastic performance. I thought it was beautiful. I loved how the orchestra kind of just came in from the ground. Another surprise for me was actually the performance for Buena Vista Social Club. I had not heard much about that show, but I was really digging that performance. And I actually enjoyed the performance for Real Women Have Curves as well. That was also a nice surprise. The other ones for me were kind of meh. Of course, I love seeing Jonathan Groff in whatever he's in, but I can't say I'm too intrigued by Justin Time, just another jukebox musical, and I'm not even too familiar with Bobby Darin. But Jonathan Groff looked like he knew what he was doing, which is, you know, all the power to him. We got some really cool presenters this year, including Aaron Tveit, Adam Lambert, Ariana DeBose with gorgeous hair that night, I might add. Kelly O'Hara was a lovely surprise, as was Kristen Chenoweth and Lea Salonga. But speaking of Lea Salonga, she was at the Tonys. Where was Bernadette Peters? We did not see anything from her that whole evening. Though, granted, I did not watch the red carpet because it's not available in Canada to watch. So if she was maybe on the red carpet, cool, but I did not see her that whole evening. Keanu Reeves presented an award, Jesse Eisenberg, Oprah Winfrey, Samuel L. Jackson. It was a cool lineup this year. And I may not have seen Bernadette Peters that whole evening, but for a split second, I thought Cole Escola was Bernadette Peters. He was really giving strong Bernadette Peters vibes that evening. It was really cool to see. Yeah, for like a split second, I thought that was her until I saw just like a really hairy chest. But that, I think, covers all of the highlights of the actual show outside of the awards themselves. So I think now's probably a good time to discuss who won. So I just want to get this one out of the way first, because I know that this was the big one, the one that myself and everyone else just kept talking about. Best Actress in a Leading Role in a Musical, going to Nicole Scherzinger. Wow. Let's flash back to who I thought would win versus who I thought should win. I don't remember the last time there has been this much competition for an award. Who do I think it will go to? I have no clue. I think every single actress here makes their case. I think truly this year has been the year of the Broadway diva. We got 5 of them this year. I will say right off the bat, I think it should go to Nicole Scherzinger. She was just absolutely transcendent in this role. And I love seeing someone in the arts kind of revive her career in a way like this. Like, it's kind of giving when Pamela Anderson was in Chicago, but on a much larger scale. So yeah, I think it should go to Nicole Scherzinger. That said, I will be perfectly satisfied if it goes to Audra McDonald or Jasmine Amy Rogers or Jennifer Simard. I would also be okay if it went to Megan Hilty, but personally, between the two, I think it should go to Jennifer Simard. I just thought she was so funny, right down to her voice. I'll discuss more of that in my review of the show, but ultimately between those two, definitely Jennifer Samard would be my pick. Now, who do I think will win the Tony? I was going to say Nicole Scherzinger right up until all this stuff between Patti LuPone and Audra McDonald. With all this controversy, I think now it is entirely possible that Audra McDonald could take home the Tony. Her 7th Tony, I might add. And honestly, I would say she deserves it just as much as Nicole Scherzinger. I think Jasmine Amy Rogers also really deserves this award, but I don't think they're going to give it to her. I don't think Boop the Musical is just a big enough draw. But back to the main point here. I think now it could very well go to Audra. Anyways, I'm sure Tony's voters right now are freaking out considering all that Patti LuPone Audra drama, because I'm willing to bet they were voting for Nicole, or at least going to vote for Nicole. I really don't know how the voting process at the Tonys works. But for now, I'm going to say I think they will give the Tony to Audra McDonald. If they really want to surprise us, they will give it to Jasmine Amy Rogers. But personally, I think it should go to Nicole Scherzinger. I know she herself kind of had her own little controversy. I thought that was ridiculous, but whatever. But in my opinion, it was her performance really that was just the most hard-hitting one. But I can't even say that because Audra's was so good. Honestly, I would put Audra and Nicole on even ground here. I think they both gave such brilliant, transcendent performances. But I think I would need to give it to Nicole if it were up to me, because her performance was a completely different spin on the character, you know? And for that reason, I think that added amount of work that went into completely reinventing a character deserves the Tony. I would say it should go to Nicole, but overall, I think they're going to give it to Audra McDonald, especially with all that drama going on. Okay, so I am very happy I was wrong. As fantastic as Audra McDonald was as Mama Rose in Gypsy, she does not need a 7th Tony. I much preferred that they give it to Nicole because she's a newbie and she did just as wonderful a job. And now she can finally call herself a Tony winner. So yeah, I am very glad it went to Nicole. I was half right because I thought it should go to Nicole, even though I thought they were going to give it to Audra. That part I was obviously incorrect about. Jennifer Samard holding up that piece of paper saying that was rude. Brilliant. I think she probably already knew that she was not going to win the Tony, so she was already kind of preparing to be like, that was rude. I loved her in that show. Iconic. But yeah, this one I am very happy with the result. What I am not happy about, however, and we need to talk about this, Boop the Musical got shafted. They did not take home any awards, not even best costume, and for some reason they didn't even get up on that stage and perform a song. I was very curious as to why they weren't up there at any point in the night. There was no representation to be had from Boop the Musical at all. That was really weird. So yeah, that was probably the most disappointing part of the evening. But moving on before I get too heated. Best Book of a Musical went to Maybe Happy Ending. They kinda sweep this year. Really cool to see. And now, let's flash back. This is a tough one. The book for Death Becomes Her was so clever. I think it's very much a book-driven musical. There's a lot of songs in it, but I think the book is a lot stronger than the score itself. I've listened to some of the score for Maybe Happy Ending, and I think it's really cool. I cannot comment on the book. I haven't seen the show. I think the book for Death Becomes Her is so strong, it will probably take home the Tony, and I think it should take home the Tony as well. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the reviews for Death Becomes Her have been stronger than Maybe Happy Ending as well. So I think that's also going to give it that bump up it might need. Just my guesses here. So once again, I will admit defeat and say I was incorrect. And honestly, I am glad that I was incorrect, because I think it's so much better to give an award like this to a completely original musical over just another movie to musical adaptation. I'm kind of getting fed up with seeing all those. I think Death Becomes Her was an exception for actually being a really good show, and yes, my review for Death Becomes Her is coming soon. Stay tuned. But I'm very glad I was wrong here. I'm glad that a show like Maybe Happy Ending, which is completely original, is getting so much love. I think it deserves that. I think that's what Broadway really needs. And I think people need more incentive to go see something completely original over something they're already comfortable with. to kind of get out of their comfort zone a little bit. Best Original Score also went to Maybe Happy Ending. I think the score Tony is going to go to Death Becomes Her. Do I think it deserves the score Tony? No. I think the Tony for Best Original Score should go to Maybe Happy Ending. I think it has a very beautiful score. I haven't listened to the whole soundtrack, but I kind of already like it more than I did Death Becomes Her. And I'll explain further my issues that I had with the score for Death Becomes Her in my review, which is coming up. But ultimately, I guess I was a little let down by it. So yeah, personally, I think I would give it to Maybe Happy Ending, but it's probably going to go to Death Becomes Her. So another one that I was very happy to be wrong about, it did end up going, of course, to Maybe Happy Ending, and I'm so glad it did. I think that score is so beautiful. I had a lot of issues with the score for Death Becomes Her. Too much what could otherwise just work as regular dialogue in the music, and that they just call it music. So way too much of that. It felt a little lazy. Meanwhile, the score for Maybe Happy Ending, I think, sounds very unique, very cool, very beautiful, and very emotionally driven. So yeah, I'm very glad it went to Maybe Happy Ending. Best Revival of a Musical, of course, going to Sunset Boulevard. I think it's very obvious at this point that the Tony is going to go to Sunset Boulevard. I think that's not even much of a competition. As brilliant as Gypsy was, the fact of the matter is Sunset Boulevard took a lot more effort to bring to the stage, simply because it's a revival that is so different from what it's been for the past several years. They really just ripped this thing apart, reconstructed it completely. Gypsy was so brilliant, but it was just Gypsy. And that's what we wanted, right? We wanted a faithful production of Gypsy, and that's what we got, which is great. But Sunset Boulevard was just something completely new. It was something that we've absolutely just never seen before in our lives. So yeah, I think it's going to take home the Tony, and I think it should take home the Tony. So I was doubly right there, and I am, of course, very glad that I am, because what other musical would it have gone to? Right? Like, the only real competition it had was Gypsy. Everything else was kind of just there. You know, Pirates the Penzance musical, what the hell is that? So yeah, a pretty obvious win, but I'm very, very glad to have seen it happen. More surprising, however, and pleasantly so, Best Direction of a Musical going to Michael Arden for Maybe Happy Ending. Again, it's an original show. It's not a revival, it's not a film to musical adaptation, it's not a jukebox musical, it's a wholly original work. And we need to see more representation of that sort of work. And we need to see more of that work in the theater as well. So I think wins like this can really push creators, producers, investors to take on original stuff. So yeah, I thought that was a good win. Well deserved by the looks of it. But let's see how I did there. Again, let's be honest, this is gonna go to Jamie Lloyd. And I think it should go to Jamie. I think he's a brilliant director. I love how he reconstructed this musical into something very different and very new. I don't see this being a competition at all. So it looked like it was a bit of a competition there. And I'm very glad I was wrong. I think upon seeing more of Maybe Happy Ending, I realized just how much it needs to win for the sake of Broadway and just for the sake of good creative work, like I've already said. So yeah, I'm glad it won. I know that I said I thought Jamie Lloyd deserved to win, but in my defense, I had not seen Maybe Happy Ending. We're allowed to change our minds and our perspectives on things. Best performance by an actor in a play going to Cole Escola. That was a pleasant surprise. Can you imagine for a second if George Clooney loses to Cole? I've been hearing so much about Cole's performance in Oh Mary. I've been hearing amazing things. But George Clooney is George Clooney. I cannot comment on who I think should win the Tony, but I do think it is going to go to George Clooney simply because he's George Clooney. Does that make for a broken system? Probably. Does it matter? Well, not to them, and certainly not to George Clooney, who is probably going to take home the Tony this year. So I think I kind of jumped the gun there, assuming that George Clooney was going to win, simply because he is George Clooney. But again, I'm glad to see that I was wrong. I wanted it to go to Cole. I'm very, very glad that it went to Cole. I think he deserved it. He looks fantastic. What is his pronouns? I'm glad Cole Escola got the award. I thought they really, really deserved it. And I'm really entertained by the fact fact that they beat out George Clooney. I know I was so dead set on saying simply because he is George Clooney, he's going to win the Tony, but I'm glad he didn't. Best performance by an actor in a leading role in a musical, going to Darren Criss, his first Tony win. That was really cool to see. Honestly, I would be shocked if this went to anyone other than Tom Francis. I think he was brilliant in Sunset Boulevard, and quite frankly, I don't think the other actors in this category stand a chance. I don't think any of the other actors here have been going outside, rain or shine, snow, hail, what have you, performing a whole musical number with a whole ensemble cast behind him. It's just, it hasn't happened outside of Sunset Boulevard. That alone, I think, will grant him the Tony Award. And I think he deserves it as well. I think he should get it. So I was especially brutal there. I was so dead set on Tom Francis winning that award. But I am so glad to see that Darren Criss actually won. I thought that was a very, very pleasant surprise. And I thought his speech was really, really beautiful as well. So yeah, so far this has been a lot of me being glad that I'm wrong. I was way off here though. Way off. Best performance by an actor in a featured role in a musical, going to Jack Malone for Operation Mincemeat. I was not familiar with this musical at all, but I know it was very, very popular. Honestly, I think it should go to Danny, and I think it will go to Danny. It's pretty simple. It's Gypsy. He gives a fantastic performance. It's going to go to him, and I think he'll deserve it. Okay, for once I would say I am not happy to be wrong. I really, really wanted this award to go to Danny Bernstein. I thought he was so wonderful in Gypsy. I thought he gave such a fantastic performance, and he was so moving, especially by the end. I'm very surprised it didn't go to him, and I know I can't really comment on Operation Mincemeat because I haven't seen it. But yeah, I am pretty sad it didn't go to Danny, and I'm allowed to be upset about that. And yes, I am still bitter that David Thaxton got snubbed. Best performance by an actress in a featured role in a musical, going to Natalie Venetia Belkin. That was a surprising win, but after seeing the performance, I thought it was a cool win. Another obvious one, it's going to go to Joy Woods for Gypsy, and I think it should go to Joy. She was phenomenal. Like, truly breathtaking in this show. I would be very surprised if it does not go to Joy. Well, I guess the win was not that obvious, now was it? Yeah, I am very, very sad that Joy Woods didn't win. I thought, much like Danny, she was wonderful in Gypsy, and she gave probably the best rendition of Little Lamb I have ever heard. But Natalie Venetia Belkin, she seemed great in the performance that I saw her do at the Tonys, so I will not be too upset about this one. Best scenic design of a play, going to Stranger Things: The First Shadow. Honestly, again, I have not seen any of these plays, but I will assume that this one is probably going to be the only award that Stranger Things will take home for the night. I've heard the show is not very good, but it looks like a very gorgeous spectacle of a play, and I think that's what the Tonys are really going to be eyeing. So yeah, Stranger Things, that's my guess. Yeah, so I was right about that one. Yay, finally I was right about something. Well, again, I've been right a little bit so far. So yeah, can't really comment. I haven't seen any of the plays, but cool, I guess. Best scenic design of a musical, again, going to Maybe Happy Ending. I think this is going to be a toss-up between Death Becomes Her and Maybe Happy Ending. Overall, I found the scenic design for Death Becomes Her to be a very, very beautiful spectacle, but I've been hearing really good things about the scenic design for Maybe Happy Ending as well. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's going to go to Death Becomes Her, and I think it should go to Death Becomes Her. It's not really a spectacle per se, but if there's any musical here that comes close to that, it would be Death Becomes Her. I think they just do such interesting things with the set. I think they do really cool stuff with the background, and yes, there is a digital background as well that I think is very well utilized, especially in one particular scene. If you've seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. So yeah, Death Becomes Her. That's my pick. So once again, I was wrong, and I'm glad to have been wrong. Again, any award that goes to a good original piece of musical theater, that's a plus in my book. So yeah, good for them. Good for Maybe Happy Ending. Best costume design of a musical, going to Death Becomes Her. I will say right off the bat, I think this 100% should go to Boop the Musical. I thought the costume design was brilliant. That Act 2 opener was some of the best costume work I have ever seen in my life. I think it should go to Boop the Musical. There is quite a lot of competition though with Death Becomes Her. So it's kind of hard to say who I think will win, but I'm going to go out on a limb and be purely optimistic and say that it's going to go to Boop the Musical. So I am very, very sad I was wrong about this one. The Tonys clearly went with glam over art. Not that there's anything wrong with glam. I love me some glam, and I love the costumes for Death Becomes Her, but the costume work for Boop the Musical was so inventive. Especially, like I mentioned, that Act 2 opener, it was beautiful. Great costume work. I'm shocked it didn't win. I'm shocked Boop the Musical didn't get anything. And quite frankly, a little appalled. So yeah, that one sucked. Best lighting design of a musical going to Sunset Boulevard. Without question, this is going to go to Sunset Boulevard, and I think it should go to Sunset Boulevard. Next. Yeah, this was a pretty obvious one. Went to Sunset Boulevard, and I'm glad it went to Sunset Boulevard. I was surprised that they didn't actually announce that during the awards itself. Apparently they did it during an Act 1 thing that Canada does not have access to because we live in 20 years ago. But yeah, glad to see Sunset Boulevard pick something up, and it deserved it. Best sound design of a musical going to Buena Vista Social Club. That was an interesting win. Again, this is another without question situation. It's going to go to Sunset Boulevard. I thought the sound design for that was brilliant, especially the orchestra, which is one of the most powerful uses of the orchestra I have ever seen or heard. Yeah, no, I think Sunset Boulevard is going to sweep all the technical categories here, and this one will be no exception. Well, I guess there was an exception called Buena Vista Social Club, a musical that I can't really form an opinion on because I haven't seen it, but it looks like a fun musical, so good for them. Best choreography, again, going to Buena Vista Social Club. They won quite a few awards this year, good for them. I 100% think that this award should go to Boop the Musical. Even if Sunset Boulevard was nominated for this, I would still say Boop. I think they're going to give it to Death Becomes Her. That's just my guess. The choreography for that was fantastic as well, but they could also very well give it to Gypsy. Gypsy did feature new choreography that was very different from the Jerome Robbins choreography that we've been seeing for decades prior. But still, I think they're going to give it to Death Becomes Her, but I believe it should go to Boop the Musical. So I was doubly wrong there, and I'm a little upset that it did not go to Boop the Musical. I think Boop deserved it, but looking at the choreography of Buena Vista Social Club from the number that I saw at the Tonys, it was good. It wasn't anything amazing. Certainly not as good as the choreo in Boop the Musical, but again, I cannot comment completely because I have not seen Buena Vista Social Club. But I am still disappointed that it did not go to Boop. Best orchestrations, again, going to Buena Vista Social Club. Wow. Again, I will be shocked if this goes to anything other than Sunset Boulevard. I think the Tonys will give it to Sunset Boulevard, and I think it should go to Sunset Boulevard. Next question. So I was wrong about that, again. And it is a little disappointing because the orchestra for Sunset Boulevard was, as I mentioned in that video for a different category, the most impactful use of the orchestra I have ever heard in a theater. It was utilized so well to build the intensity and to make you feel uncomfortable and surprised, and at some points it could be a bit of a jump scare kind of thing. It just alters your physical response to what's happening. And I thought that was really cool. So now we will wrap this up with Best Musical going, of course, surprise, surprise, to Maybe Happy Ending. Honestly, I think it's kind of a toss-up between Death Becomes Her and Maybe Happy Ending. Interestingly enough, Death Becomes Her and Maybe Happy Ending both lead with 10 nominations, which kind of makes this a lot more difficult to determine. I think if the Tonys are going to go for what's more popular, it's going to go with Death Becomes Her. If it's going to go for the more artistically original project, I think it'll go to Maybe Happy Ending. Who do I think should win? I have not seen Maybe Happy Ending, so I, by default, need to say Death Becomes Her, but I've heard amazing things about Maybe Happy Ending. I think it has every opportunity to take home that Tony, but my vote, Death Becomes Her the musical. So to wrap this up, I will say once again, I was very, very, very glad to have been wrong here. I am so happy it went to Maybe Happy Ending. Yes, I have not seen it yet, but again, it's an original piece of theater, and it's a good original piece of theater. Why shouldn't that win the Tony? I'm very glad that here at least, the Tonys did not prioritize what's popular and instead went for the more artistically significant, went for the more original. So yeah, well-deserved win. I cannot wait to see Maybe Happy Ending on my next trip to New York. So that about wraps up this year's Tonys. Overall, I thought it was a great show. I thought most of the performances were fantastic. And that about wraps up my thoughts on the 78th Tony Awards ceremony. I thought it was a great one this year. There were so many great shows. There was a lot of really, really healthy competition. And of course, Best Actress in a Leading Role in a Musical. I'm so glad I went to Nicole. Yeah, no, it was a good one this year. I was very, very impressed. Great show overall. Bravo. And I cannot wait to see what's in store for the 2025 and 2026 Broadway season. So, what did you think of the Tony Awards this year? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, but please, let's be respectful of each other. If you like this video, you can give it a like. If you like me, you can subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I hope you will stay tuned for more. Bye!